Yo, 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 welcome to another edition of Red Wine and History by me. Today we're drinking Indomitah, a Chilean red. It's a bit vinegary, but it's alright. Which I've already had a lot of it because I've already done this talk once and I ran out of battery at the end. But that's another story. So if I slur my words, I'm sorry. The Jacobite rebellions, one of my favourite subjects, because I'm a Jacobite, and for two reasons. Robbie Burns, his Jacobite tunes are banging. Secondly, Charles Townley, who led the English Jacobites, was a Burnley boy. So we'll come back to that in a bit. It all begins with Queen Elizabeth I, the so-called Virgin Queen, who wasn't really a virgin. I mean, she was pretty hot, like, she would have been seduced. But she never produced a legitimate heir. Now, her cousin, Mary Queen of Scots, has a son, James VI of Scotland. He is nominated heir to the English crown. 1603, Elizabeth chucks the bucket. James I leaves Edinburgh, gets crowned in London. You know, King of England, never goes back to Scotland, by the way. I mean, he wasn't gentrified, it's bloody freezing. There was no fringe to go back to, he just never went back. He has a son, Charles I, who gets his head chopped off for being an arrogant prick, and Oliver Cromwell turns up. The Protectorate shows that English republicanism is possible. It is possible to get rid of, like, the parasitic monarchy. Then the Restoration happens. Charles II turns up. You know, it's quite a libertine period, and he has like 1 million kids, but none of them are legal. So his brother, the Duke of York, James, gets crowned King of England. Now the problem is, he was brought up in a Catholic court in exile in France. Therefore he's now Catholic because he's been brainwashed by the Pope. But the English establishment do not like this one bit. They've had enough of the Catholics. Like, you can jog on, lads and lasses. So there's unrest. The Duke of Monmouth turns up, tries to like have a revolution. He gets killed at Sedgemoor. And then the Glorious Revolution happens. Now James II's got a couple of daughters, Mary and Anne. Now Queen Mary, Mary's married William of Orange, a Protestant Dutchman, and the English establishment say to William, they say, look, you're married to a Stuart, you're a Protestant, why don't you come out king? He's like, alright, sounds like a good deal to me, you know, get some massive houses, people that wait on my hand and foot, sounds brilliant. So the Glorious Revolution happened, 1688, bloodless. James II's not stupid, he just fucks off, goes into exile in France. Then he actually turns up again in Ireland because that's like, they're staunchly Catholic. Then the Battle of the Boyne happens in 1689. You've got the Orangemen of like Glasgow and Ulster. You know, they still like celebrate the winning the Battle of the Boyne in 1689. That's what all this sectarian bullshit's all about. That fucking battle. Anyway, James II now has to stay in France. William and Mary don't produce a legitimate heir. So Mary's sister, Queen Anne, is now the queen. Quite a nice period, the early 1700s. You know, Dryden, Pope, good times, good poetry. And she dies 1714. Guess what? No legitimate heir. So the English establishment are like, they're very entrenched that we will not have a Catholic. The legitimate king is living in France, but because he is a Catholic, nah. They go through all the lists. Catholic, blah, blah, no. They find the nearest Protestant to the throne, and he happens to be an obscure Hanoverian prince called George I. He's like, would you like to be King of England? What do you say? He didn't speak a word of English, but he becomes King of England. What a fucked up country we live in. He takes the throne, and this was like the sort of like spark, the catalyst, that inspired the first Jacobite rebellion. And this was a well-led army, badly manned. And the second one was a good army, badly led. So the first Jacobite rebellion is all about all the Highland chiefs. Now the Highland chiefs are like basically little kings, like gods. I'd say the Highland chiefs in those days were gods. You know, they had the power of life and death over all their sort of like clan. And they then sort of like revered the royal chief as the ultimate chief, like the Maharaja, you know what I mean? And they get a rebellion together, they march, they get as far as Preston and get their asses kicked. That's the end of the first Jacobite rebellion, 1715. Now a whole generation passes, right? James II is dead, James III is alive. His son is Bonnie Prince Charlie. You know, it was cool. He's brought up in the French court. He's slick. He's sophisticated. Dressed well. You know, etiquette. He was a cool lad, Bonnie Prince Charlie. He's 24 years old, and he goes to his dad. I'm going to get back the throne for you, and let's do this shit. It's now or never. He's got the support of the French king. So he lands in one of the locks in Scotland, 1745, September. Now the Highland chiefs, the Highlanders, they just love a good scrap, and they are loyal to this sort of like blood bond, you know. Whereas the British, the rest of Britain, is slowly becoming this mercantile. Their god is now Mammon, you know, the god of money. Anyway, he's landed, and then the McDonald's of Skye turn up, the set fire to the burning standard, wander on Skye. We're going for a fight, lads. Bonnie Prince Charlie's landed. Suddenly he's got Highland chiefs turning up. Gets gets an army of 2,000 together. Marches on Edinburgh. Edinburgh, they put up a bit of a resistance, but they come, no, these Highlanders are complete noise. And then they come up like the Royal Mile, they take over Edinburgh, and Edinburgh's in the hands of Bonnie Prince Charlie. Now, if this was probably the best place where they should have stopped it, they should have said, let's take Scotland, let's annul the political agreement, because there's the Union of the Crowns in 1603, and then there's the political union in 1707, which created the United Kingdom. Now that was all based on the Darien expedition, because a few years earlier, the Scots, wanting a taste of the sort of like colonial empire and you know the money that comes from that, ploughed half its money into this obscure expedition to some like swampy, fucking mosquito-ridden portion of the Central America, which just flopped into nothing, bankrupting half of Scotland. Therefore, Scotland is now politically tied to England. The United Kingdom's born. And if Bonnie Prince Charlie was to took Edinburgh and just said, right, we are now Scotland, let's divide, let's like get rid of that political union, they could have had these two kingdoms going on, Scotland, England, you know, same like Estonia, Latvia, okay, and Lithuania. They could have had these two separate kingdoms. Problem is, the London didn't want that to happen, so they've sent an army up north, led by Sir John Cope. They've come up the sort of like East Coast, Newcastle, Dunbar, Berwick, Dunbar. To get to East Lothian, Bonnie Prince Charlie and his 2,000 Highlanders are in Edinburgh, so they march out to meet him, and Johnny Cope is coming in from one side. They get to like Trinent, and Bonnie Prince Charlie and his Highlanders get to there, and in the middle of the night, the Highlanders come into Trinent up on the hills, go round the back of the British lines, dawn comes up, the British turn round, there's 2,000 fucking Highlanders behind them with massive swords, who then do this Highland charge. 15 minutes later, the British are in full retreat. third of them like dead, big swords. Like the Highland charge scares the shit out of him. You got like 2,000 drunken Highlanders screaming Gaelic at you, like with massive swords. No one could withstand that at that point in time. The reason being is that the British Army at that point was mainly in Flanders fighting the sort of Austrian, the Spanish Wars of Succession in Flanders. So they've got like sort of like amateur part-time territorial army type army defending Preston Pans. The British flee. Scotland is secured. It's there. Prince Charles won. Woohoo! Right, what do we do now, lads? Suddenly, all the other Highland chieftains who were sitting on the fence, you know, there's a lot of people in this world who don't throw their all in until they know it's all right. Mussolini was one. You know what I mean? So suddenly, the Highland army swelling to about 8,000. They're all dithering about in Edinburgh. Really, they should just held the fort and just defended Scotland. Won the Battle of Hearts and Minds. Said, look, this is a second Bannockburn. But they didn't. Mainly because Prince Charlie ultimately was there to restore the crown of the United Kingdom to his dad, James III. So he said, lads, let's go. Like, what are you on about? I said, we're going to go march on London. London? Got to remember, some of these Highlanders are from fucking like Caithness, stuff like that, from miles away. And like, no, they've never even went as far as past Inverness. But now they've been ordered by the Highland chiefs who are all like in awe of Prince Charlie. And they have been promised support by the French and support by the English Jacobites, the Catholics of England, who still form a sort of quite considerable minority in England. So the idea is, the dream, they march south, the English Jacobites join the army, the French turn up, the Hanoverians don't stand a chance. So they set off marching south. They get to Carlisle, take it in no time, march through Cumbria. They're in Kendal. It's quite famous, the Prince Charlie Estate. There's a plaque in Kendal, Prince Charlie Estate here and stuff like that. They get to Preston, and that's where the first Jacobite rebellion ended, because that was militarily ended. And then they keep marching, and then they get to Derby, right? The reality now is, by the time, no, they've got to Manchester before they get to Derby. Manchester is where the English Jacobites turn up. Now, they were expecting thousands. In reality, it was 300, mainly from Burnley, led by a Burnley boy, because that's a Catholic hotbed. It always has been. Lancashire's always been a Catholic hotbed. It was the Wild West of England for many years, like, you know. After the harrowing of the North by William the Conqueror, it was like a wasteland. So you've got to think of Lancashire as the Scotland of England, you know what I mean? It was like a place, the Highlands of England, sorry, place you didn't go to, still don't. Anyway, they've got to Manchester, then they march to Derby, and now all these Highlanders are going like, mate, what's going on? And the Duke of Cumberland, who is King George II's second son, King George III would be his, no, maybe George the first son, I can't remember the Georges. Anyway, he's like second son, and he's like the same age as Prince Charlie, 25, and he's hardcore. He's like a Teutonic SS, like, you know, Auschwitz camp fucking commandant in the 18th century. He's a tough nut, like, and he's leading the British. And ultimately, they had an army up in Newcastle and an army in London. London, by the way, is now panicking to fuck. They don't know what they're like, burying the treasure. They're all fleeing. They're scared of this like Highlanders coming down to like eat the children and shit. So you've got two armies converging on the Jacobites with about 8,000, but you've got like 10,000 in Newcastle coming down from that way, because the invasion came down the west side. They thought they were coming on the east side. And then you got another 10,000 coming from London, and then you got a hostile fucking land to go through. The French hadn't turned up because the British Navy's like sank any ships coming to help them. You know, the British Navy's always there. So they're all there in Derby, and they have this like war conference. And the Highland chiefs are like, let's go home. Have you seen the Midlands? It's a rat dump. Do you know what I mean? It's like, let's go home. Eventually, Bonnie Prince Charlie was convinced that it was the right thing to do was to go back. So they start the retreat and they get to Carlisle. They put the Manchester Regiment in Carlisle. It's like, you're English, you defend, you keep the English out. And they're fucked off. Something like Charles Talon is there with his 300 men going, this is not going to work. With Carlisle, it's a medieval fortress. We've a bit fucked. Lo and behold, it wasn't a happy ending for the English Jacobites in Carlisle. 1746 happens. It's come round. The Jacobites and the English fight a battle at Falkirk. It's a bit of like a Pyrrhic. I won't say victory. It's more like a Pyrrhic stalemate. You know, everyone got slaughtered. Nothing happened. They go back to Edinburgh, and then Charlie's now convinced to go to Inverness. We're going to make Inverness. Inverness is the Highland capital. We're all Highlanders. We can hold the Highlands. So they moved on from the mercantile central belt because Glasgow they didn't even want to fucking whiff of this rebellion. They're too obsessed with making money to like go for this like romantic royalty chieftain bloodshed. The Ouija's were like, whatever. They wouldn't even give them shoes. Jacobites ordered some shoes in Glasgow and they marched down. They wouldn't even give them. I'm digressing. So, Bonnie Prince Charlie, April 1746, he's got now, his 8,000 Highlanders is reduced to 5,000. And up east coast of Scotland, the same route that Agricola took when he was on the way to Monsgro Pius to fight the Picts in the Roman days. They're going up the east coast. They're supported by the Royal Navy. They get to Nairn. Now they're in Nairn, and the Jacobites are in Inverness. So the Jacobites like, it's now or never, lads. We're gonna have to fight them at some point. We can't retreat beyond Nairn because Inverness. That's our capital. We've got to defend the capital, and we need to defend it in open battle. So they leave Inverness and get to a place called Culloden House, and the moors around Culloden House is where a potential battle could be fought. Now the pitch camp, the British camping in Nairn. Now they were all having a bit of a piss up for something. I think it was the Duke of Cumberland's birthday. Who was leading these guys? It's his birthday. I can't remember. I haven't studied this talk, and I'm now a bit drunk. Anyway, so Bonnie Prince Charlie goes to it, lads. He says, lads, I've had a great idea. They're like, what? He said, look, why don't we do like a night march and like take down. Well, like, goes there, the British camp, slaughter the fuck out of them. Because, like, there's 10,000 of them, there's 5,000 of us. Open battle, it's not going to be... But if we, like, just go and, like, kill them all while they were sleeping, we could win the war. So they said, yeah, great idea, bruv. They set off marching through the middle of the night. The one thing they didn't have, like, torches on the mobile phones at all. So they all get lost. By the time they get to the British camp, like an 8-mile hike or something, the sun's coming up and the elements of surprise is gone. So the son said, right, let's go back. They're like, what are you about? I said, no, we're just going to have to go back to the main lands. This is not working. This plan's fucked up. I mean, it was a good gamble, but it didn't work. So they get back to the where they were that morning. So they've now marched 16 miles. They haven't had any food. They're absolutely exhausted. It's the bleak weather, like grey clouds, drizzly as fuck, proper like nasty April Highland weather, you know. So picture the scene. You're one of these guys. There's 5,000 of you. Suddenly, in the distance, these perfectly regimented, precisely placed chessboard fucking squadrons of troops are appearing in front of you with about 3 times as many cannon as you have, all like that, and you're just stationary, you're just watching it happen. They should have just charged the fuck out of him, but they never did. Anyway, the two armies are ready for the set piece battle. What they should have done, shoulda, woulda, coulda, they should have just charged the fuck out of him there and then, but they just stood still. Now the British Army starts its cannonade, wipes out the Scottish cannonade in like 5 minutes, and then starts like obliterating these 5,000 Highlanders. You're like, are we going to attack you? Cannonball, through your stomach. Boom. Half an hour of this goes by, and the people on the right flank, now the clan on the right flank, I think it was the MacDonalds and the Campbells. Now one of the flanks was really pissed off because their traditional place was on the left, and it was given to another clan. So you got this like internecine clan division, which really fucked up the Highland Army at Culloden, because I mean it goes back. You know, they'll argue over a goat for 200 years and like kill each other's sisters and shit, you know what I mean? The Highlanders didn't get on, and keeping them together in a cohesive unit was essential, and it didn't happen at Culloden, and that lack of cohesion, you know, reneged on any chance they had of winning that battle. They should have charged as a unit, they might have done it. Instead, the right flank of the Highland Army, after a while they were like, fuck this, they set off charging, and they actually broke through the first line, second line, but the third line was too much. The British Army was in 3 lines. If the rest of the army were doing the same, yeah, but the rest of the Highland Army is still being fucking slaughtered by cannons. And then eventually they saw the right flank charging, and there was just no, Bonnie Prince Charlie, he just didn't have any clue, he didn't do anything, he just stood there still, you know what I mean? And it was grisly slaughter. And then after a while, once that right flank attack had been absorbed, the left flank attack didn't even get to the lines, you know, because of the boggy ground. Then Duke of Cumberland goes, general advance. That's it. That general advance lasted all the way to Inverness, and there was people, the Highlanders were slaughtered all the way, because the British were trying to stamp out this rebellious, you know, the rebellion. The last major battle fought on British soil was for a German and a Frenchman, really. It's quite funny. So, pardon me. So, they get to Inverness. Bonnie Prince Charlie, it's the end of the rebellion, they're fucked. The British turn up in Inverness, they start slaughtering everybody. And that doesn't stop, by the way. Then you've got the Butcher of Cumberland. Now, like I said, what I mentioned before, like this SS fucking commandant, he now goes around and fucking destroys the Highlanders. Which, you know, they banned the tartan. They killed everyone. You know what I mean? The Highlanders we will never have a rebellion from this sort of like, because the Highlanders were the law unto themselves until that moment. They built Fort William, they built Fort George. The Highlanders are now destroyed as a potential threat to the Crown of London. Well, I wouldn't say the British Crown, it's the London Crown, really. And Bonnie Prince Charlie begins his sort of like 6 months odyssey. I don't know if it was 6 months, but it was definitely a few months odyssey, which ends up with him dressing as a woman, Flora MacDonald's Sky, speed Bonnie boat like a bird on the wing, that vibes. He ends up like getting on a boat and fucking going back to France, and then he sort of spent the rest of his exile in Italy. It was the end of the Jacobite dream. But I mean, come on. You've got to do it. You do have to do it, because if you believe in something, you've got to follow it through. And I think in this day and age, there's not enough people who would follow through their beliefs. And if Bonnie Prince Charlie was to come through Burnley again, if I'd had a few Benny and Blacks down the Burnley Manors, I would probably go to war for Bonnie Prince Charlie. Do you know what I mean? Fuck it. It's a romantic ideal. And it's the last bit of romance that this country really had, you know, before the Romantic poets took it up next. But those days were when a man could be a poet by picking up his sword, you know, and those days are over. They died on Culloden Moor that day, that really dreary day, and you've got to, you know, you've got these British soldiers bayoneting the fuck out of these Highland lads who are 18, who's been told by the chief, "You're coming with me." You've got no choice. To get bayoneted by some fucking guy from Wigan with a bayonet who's like a dick. Do you know what I mean? It's quite sad, really. But anyway, that's the Jacobite rebellions. 25 minutes. These talks are getting longer. I think that's possibly down to the fact that I was slurring my speech. Next time, I will make sure I know who. Do you know what it was? Do you know another thing? I couldn't remember Queen Mary, Queen Anne, and I can't remember who's dad. So Queen Anne is James II's dad. Queen Mary is his sister. Boom. There you go. Until next time.